Hello everyone and welcome back to Beatly Tone's Beatles channel. Lovely to have you here. Thanks for joining me for this video and I hope you're all doing well. Big welcome to all the new subscribers. Thank you very much for subscribing and welcome to the channel, and a big hello to all the old subscribers. Thank you for your continued support. Now, today's video is going to be a review video, and for those more observant viewers amongst you, you would already guessed that the album that I'm going to be reviewing is 1965's Help Album Week. Now, I want to explain how the review is going to work and how I've done the videos that I have reviewed so far. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about the album in general, and then we're going to go through each track individually, and I'm going to score each track out of 10. What I'll do at the end of that is add up all the scores for all the tracks on the album, then divide it by the number of tracks on the album to get an average score for the album. That is so I can keep all the albums on a level playing field, and the reason for that I will explain at the end of this video, and you'll understand why I have to do it like that. It's not a perfect way of doing a review because, as I've said before, sometimes the sum of the whole album is greater than its individual parts, but this is a bit clinical, but it's a way of doing it kind of fairly. So there is going to be a small caveat to the scoring system, and that is that songs that are covers are only going to be scored out of 7. Now, why am I only scoring covers out of 7, I hear you ask?
Beatly Tone, why are covers only being marked out as 7?
Well, I'll tell you. Because when you record an album, there is a process. There is the writing of the album, there is the recording of the album, there is the production and the mixing of the album. But when it's a cover song, one of those elements is missing, and that's the writing. And therefore, a song that is a cover doesn't have that writing process, so it's not really worth as much as an original composition. So that's going to be the rules, and that's how it's going to work. So before we take a deep dive into the album, we'll just talk about it from a personal point of view. I first heard the Help album in 1976, and this was the version that I bought. It's a sort of 1970s pressing, I guess. Here is the vinyl, which is in pretty good nick, seeing as I played it to death on my Bush Music Centre, which was not really the best piece of stereo equipment I've ever owned. But I think that this sounds really great. We get a little bit carried away with the remasters and the remixes and all that sort of stuff, and forget how good these albums were when we first heard them. And I've largely ignored this album for many, many years, but I did play it before doing this review, and I think I'm going to take a listen to all my old 70s pressings of these albums, because I think they sound really great. Now, the mix that is on this copy of the vinyl is the 1965 George Martin mix, which you can get on CD on the it's tacked on the end of the mono Help CD, which is a bit of an odd place for it. This is the one that came in the mono box in 2009. Bit odd, really. I mean, really, it would have been much better suited being tacked on the end of the stereo remaster if it was going to be tacked anywhere. The first CD that I had was this one in 1987. Now, this one, George Martin wasn't happy about the transfer of his 65 mix onto here. He messed around with the reverb. We've got digital reverb on this, where there's analog reverb on the original mix. And of course, when he came to doing the 2009 remasters, the remaster there at the back there, the stereo remaster, is obviously taken. It's remastering of this CD. So let's get on with the album. So the Help album was released in the UK on the 6th of August 1965, and of course it got to #1 all over the world. Now the album that we're talking about today, the UK version of the album, is part film soundtrack album, side 1, all songs from the film. The rest of it is genuine studio album material, a different beast altogether to the version of Help that was released in the US, which was a true soundtrack album, and with Beatles songs and incidental music from the film, and the rest of the studio tracks were actually split over 3 albums, I think, in America. But one of the important things I think about the Help album is the discussion that it brings up about whether the Help album was a turning point in the Beatles' career. And by that, I mean the point where they started writing much more mature songs and experimenting with their instrumentation. And I think that is partly true. I think there are at least 4 songs on this album that kind of point to that, but by the same token, there's a lot of songs on this album that would probably fit quite comfortably on the previous album, Beatles for Sale. And although I feel that the Help album is a step up from Beatles for Sale, a fairly big step up, it's nowhere near as big of a step up that we find between Help and Rubber Soul. And when we consider that Rubber Soul came out only a few months after Help, it's a massive jump, I feel. And so for me, it's not quite the turning point. It's partially that, but for me, the real turning point happened with the next album, Rubber Soul. And we also should remember that 1965 was the last year in which the Beatles had to go through this rigorous routine of turning out 2 studio albums, doing all the touring and doing all the TV appearances and all that sort of stuff, and trying to fit in the recording of those 2 albums in between all that stuff. So, of course, the other thing we should take into consideration when talking about the Help album is the amount of weed that they were smoking while they were making this album, and when they were on location making the film. They obviously had a lot of fun with it. But I'm not sure that we see too much influence of pop coming through on the songs in this album, so maybe it's not such a big consideration after all at this stage. So let's get on with the songs that are on the album. Obviously, track 1, side 1, is the title track, Help, a brilliant album opener, a brilliant opener for the film as well. It got to #1 all over the world. Now, Help started off life as a much more dramatic, slower piano ballad, and I think that John said that he realised much later that the lyrics of the song Help were literally a plea for help, everything getting on top of him, the whole Beatlemania thing, the demand on his time to make records, to do TV appearances, the fans' adulation, everything was kind of building up, and that's kind of what that's about. Now, I think that the fact that they did, speed it up and rock it up to make it more commercial paid dividends, because obviously, as I said, it got to #1. The things I love about this track is, firstly, John's vocal is just so spot on, and you can really hear emotion in his voice. I also love the backing vocals from Paul and George that we get in verses 1 and 2. I love the way that the harmony starts before the lead vocal comes in, and it's kind of following John is following what they are starting off with. But by the time we get to the end of each line, both the harmony and the lead vocal melody are in line. We've also got that descending 3-note guitar phase and that jingly jangly guitar, which is something that we haven't heard in a Beatles song before, and that's something that makes the song as well. I think when it breaks down for verse 3, or at the beginning of verse 3, we kind of get a little feel of what that earlier ballad version might sound like when it just breaks down to just vocal and acoustic guitar and the odd tap of the cymbal, and maybe we'll get to hear that demo if Help ever gets a deluxe box set release. So that's Help, opening track. For me, I can't give it any less than 10 out of 10, can I? Fantastic song. So next song up is Paul's The Night Before. Now this is one of those songs that I feel could fit quite easily on Beatles for Sale. It's not one of my favourites on the album. It's got a great melody. I really like John's electric piano part in here. That's quite prominent throughout the song, but I feel that the song is let down by some pretty trite lyrics. So for me, a good melody, rubbish lyrics, I'm giving that a 7. So track 3 is You've Got to Hide Your Love Away. Absolutely love this song. Now, by my reckoning, I think this is the first fully acoustic song that the Beatles ever recorded. Obviously, clearly influenced by Bob Dylan, but ironically, as the Beatles were laying down their electric guitars to record this, pretty much at the same time, Bob Dylan was picking up his electric guitar and recording Bring It All Back Home. So a bit of mutual admiration going on there. The Beatles, they use descending chords to get from verse to chorus. John's vocals are not double tracked for the first time in like forever, and that kind of gives it more of a folky feel. It's a very sensitive lyric, and it's got a beautiful flute outro, and there's no way I can give this any less than 10 out of 10 for You've Got to Hide Your Love Away. So track 4 is the first of George's 2 songs on the album, and it's the better of the 2, and that's I Need You. Now this was definitely a step up from Don't Bother Me in my opinion, and a little bit of experimentation with the sound. That kind of wah, wah sound is made by George using a volume pedal, which he also used on Yes It Is, which was also recorded in these sessions. It's a pretty harmless song, but it's unspectacular in many ways, so I'm giving this one 6.5 out of 10. So track 5 is Another Girl, and this is another upbeat, fast-paced jaunt written by Paul, pretty much in the same sort of vein as The Night Before, that sort of song. Again, a nice melody. This is one of those songs that I think would have sat very nicely on Beatles for Sale and probably made it a better album. Have a listen to those little shards of guitar played on the offbeat by George, I think, very similar to what we get on She's a Woman. Sounds very similar. Also some nice guitar licks from George and some interesting bass playing from Paul as well. But lyrically, the song's a little bit, well, it's a little bit na 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 to the girl in question, and maybe a little bit too smug to be lovable, but it's a decent song, and I'm giving Another Girl 7 out of 10. So track 6 is You're Going to Lose That Girl. I've never ever referred to this song as You're Going to Lose That Girl before. It's always You're Gonna Lose That Girl. That's what he sings in the song. I don't think he ever sings You're Going to Lose That Girl, but I absolutely love this song. I really love the call and response backing vocals and lead vocals. I think they're fantastic. I really add something to the song, as does the tracking of Ringo's bongos on top of his normal kit. That adds something to the song as well. I think it's a very underrated song and somewhat forgotten, I think. And I think in some respects, this song, and especially the placing of it on the album, is a kind of response to Paul's Another Girl, where he's not being very nice to the girl, and John in this song is saying, if you're not careful, I'm gonna nick your bird. And if they had called it If You're Not Careful, I'm Gonna Nick Your Bird, I would have given it 9. But because they called it You're Going to Lose That Girl, it's getting an 8. But it's a great song. So side 1 closes with the brilliant Ticket to Ride. It had already been a #1 single by the time the album had come out, but just everything for me shines. Or the combination of the guitar riff with Ringo's inventive drum pattern that he plays. John again delivers a really fantastic vocal, and it's an uncertain vocal because he only thinks he's going to be sad and he only thinks it's going to be today, and all this sort of stuff all kind of combined together, and I don't think we could have possibly got something like this song on Beatles for Sale or pre-pop, and it couldn't be more influenced by that if the lyrics had been about running out of Rizzlers or arguing about who's going to the late night garage. But there are other things, there are other clever touches like Ringo's tambourine that's inserted during his drum pattern, but it's inserted on the offbeat and things like that. The bass, it's really locking in with Ringo's drums, and it does that brilliantly and holds the whole thing really tightly together. The bit where we go into the sort of the middle eight part where the drumming goes straight and Ringo is like thrashing his hi-hat like a man possessed, and then we get that bit at the end, My Baby Don't Cares, where it kind of goes into double time. Just everything about this song works for me. Brilliant song, and of course it's getting 10 out of 10. Side 2 opens with a country song, but there's no need to be afraid. This is Buck Owens' Act Naturally, and this is a good cover. Ringo sings and it really suits his voice. We know that he can sing country very well. Paul's high harmony on this sounds great alongside Ringo's vocals, and I noticed that Ringo is clicking his sticks against the rim of his snare throughout this song, and it sounds a little bit like a horse galloping, and I don't know if that's a country to try and make it sound more country. I don't know, maybe it's on the original. I don't think I've ever heard the original, but that was something that I noticed only quite recently. The instrumentation is quite sparse as it is for a lot of country songs, but the whole thing works really well and I like it. It is a cover song, so it can only get a mark out of 7 on my reviews, but it is a good cover and I'm giving it 6.5. Next up is John's song, It's Only Love, a song that much later, when he was in a particularly bad mood, he said he absolutely hated it, but I quite like it. It's got quite a strong melody, I think. The lyrics aren't brilliant, but the melody is really good. That interesting guitar sound is achieved by playing the guitar through the Leslie speaker of an organ. It's an okay song. I do like this song. I'm going to give this one 7.5. I definitely think there is a dip on side 2 of this album. It's not as strong as the first side. And track 3 on side 2 is George's second song on the album, You Like Me Too Much, and to be absolutely honest, it's a bit of a stinker. There's only really one memorable moment for me on this song, and that's the bit that bookends the song at the start and the finish, and that's the combination of sound that you get with the piano being played by Paul and George Martin against the electric piano being played by John. I think the combination of the two is great, and we get it at the start and at the end of the song, and the start of the song is good and the end of the song is good, but the bit in the middle is rubbish. It's not a good song. I think the lyrics are absolutely awful. They're very smug, they're very cocky, and I don't think that's who George is, and so it doesn't really ring true to me at all. So I don't like this song at all. I'm giving this a 5, and it's lucky to get that. So track 4 on side 2 is Tell Me What You See, and I think this is quite an underrated song, and it's definitely been underrated by me, but having listened to this album a few times in preparation for doing this review, I found a new love for this song. And things that I like about this song is the harmonies between John and Paul on this are absolutely superb. Really, really, really good. And I like the fact that the way that the song stops at the end of a verse, and we get that little piano refrain, and then it's brought back in with Ringo's kick and snare drums. I really like those parts. I think those parts break it up nicely and breathe a little bit of life into it. So this is a reasonable song now in my eyes, and it wasn't before, and I'm giving it 7. So track 5 on side 2 is Paul's I've Just Seen a Face, another little slice of folk, again probably influenced by Bob Dylan, although the melody on this is so strong it's unlikely to have been sourced from anything that had come out of his Royal Bobness's back catalogue, because he doesn't really do really strong melodies like this. But again, it's fully acoustic song. We've got George and John also on acoustic guitar as well as Paul. I love the little twiddly bit at the start of the song. I'm not sure if it's George or Paul that plays that, but it's great. Great harmonies on this song, but interestingly, it's Paul harmonising with himself, and although John and George are on the song, they're not on it vocally. The song itself is as catchy as hell, and it's a really great song, and it's a song that Paul still plays today. And in fact, I think the best version of this song is the one that we get on Wings Over America, where we have a real bass guitar on it. I think the bass notes on this song are being played on acoustic guitar, and we've got a kick drum as well to give it a little bit more drive, and it's really great on that album, so do check it out if you haven't heard it. But this is a great song, so I'm giving it 8.5. So the penultimate track is the absolutely incredible Yesterday. Yes, I know we've heard it too many times to really get excited about it, but if we just sit back and think about it, it is a little stroke of genius. Paul on an acoustic guitar, and then a 4-piece string quartet. Of course there's a of course that's what quartet means. It's 4-piece. Yes, a string quartet. He's playing with a string quartet, and it is really great. And I'm finding it hard to find things to say about Yesterday that hasn't been said before. We all kind of know the story, how the song came to him in a dream, and he woke up one night in the middle of the night and he had this tune in his head, and he had to scrabble about in the dark to find a tape recorder so he could sing it into his tape recorder so he could remember the melody in the morning. And famously he says that he sang scrambled eggs, oh my darling how I love your legs. And if I'm trying to find something to say about this song that hasn't been said before, I'm going to say this, that if you think of Paul as an absolute genius, think of him getting out of bed, waking up in the middle of the night, bleary-eyed, searching around in the dark for his tape recorder. He was probably at that time either naked or just wearing his underpants, and that is a great leveller for the rest of us mere mortals. But if there's a Help deluxe box set, please can we have the Oh My Darling How I Love Your Legs demo? I know it's getting 10, you know it's getting 10, so let's give it 10. And so we arrive at the final track on the album, and it is Dizzy Miss Lizzy. And obviously this is an attempt to end the album with another sort of balls out rocker like Twist and Shout or Money or something like that. I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with John's vocal on this, it's fantastic. But that guitar riff, that bloody guitar riff, it's relentless. It goes on and on and on. And even the solo is that guitar riff. And it's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. It grates on me. It pierces my ears. It's like fingernails scraping down a blackboard for 3 minutes, and it gets on my nerves. And what with that, and Ringo clanging away at his cowbell like an overzealous dinner lady with a metal tray full of mashed potatoes and hitting it with a metal spoon. That's what Dizzy Miss Lizzy is for me. It's terrible. It is a cover, so it's only out of 7, and I'm only giving it 3. So that was the Help album review. Now, Help as an album, a total score for Help was 106 points. There are 14 tracks on the album, so that gives it an average score of 7.57. Now, why am I doing all this scoring and average scores? Well, I'll tell you. So I've come up with this idea, which I'm calling Beatly Tone's Great Big Album Review Ranking Table, where I'm going to pitch all the albums of the Beatles, of John Lennon, of Paul McCartney, of George Harrison, Ringo Starr against each other. So every time I do a review, they will go into the table, and I'm very excited. I'm not wetting myself excited, which at my age is a bonus in itself, but I'm excited to see how the albums pitch against each other once I've reviewed it, because I think everyone really needs to know whether Stop and Smell the Roses is a better album than Extra Texture or something like that. So I'm quite excited to see what the results will be. So I'll show you Beatly Tone's Great Big Album Reviewing Ranking Table as it stands before Help goes into the table. And I've only really reviewed 4 albums so far. Well, that's not quite true. I did review All Things Must Pass, but that was before I had the point system, so I haven't given it any points, so it's not on here. So this is the table as it stands. There, I've reviewed 4 albums. If you want to see the videos of those reviews, there on the channel, just have a dig around for them. At the moment, Imagine is on the top, so that's the one to beat at the moment. So let's take the table and slip Help into the mix, and we can see from this that Help has now overtaken McCartney 3 and moved into 4th place, and it's just below Let It Be, but only just. So I'll be interested to see how that develops over the coming months. I'm planning to do a review every 2 or 3 weeks, so it will build up fairly quickly. Obviously there'll be other videos in between, and what I think I'll do is I'm going to do a community tab thing where I'm going to give you 4 albums to vote for of which one you want me to review next. So I'll give you a choice of 4 and you can choose, and that'll probably be on a Friday, so look out for a community tab with a little poll for you to take part in. That would be great if you could participate in that. If no one's interested, I'll just pick one myself, but that's coming, so have a look out for that. So as usual, please tell me your thoughts on the Help album down in the comments. That would be absolutely brilliant. Is it the transitional album that some fans think, or did the transition happen much later? Did I get the scores right, or did I get them wrong? If you want to tell me your scores, that'd be absolutely fantastic. You know the score. I always read your comments and I always comment back. So please give us something to read. Okay, so that's it from me, really. Thanks very much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for your continued support on the channel, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye-bye.